Hello and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast. Today, my guest is Raven Scott, and we talk about how to navigate life with a narcissist. When we talk today about this, we are talking about true narcissistic personality disorder, not just somebody with narcissism. Raven is a survivor of narcissistic abuse. She is the podcast host of the Empath and the Narcissist, and she's written 2 books about this topic. So she's super well versed. And when we are in relationships with somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, it can be very overwhelming. It can be confusing. And at times we can kind of doubt our own sanity and ourselves. And so today we talk about tools, tips, practical advice of how to navigate relationships with a narcissist. And definitely the most important thing is boundary setting, boundaries. So I do think that this is an important issue. There's a lot of narcissists that have popped up in my life in the last couple of years, and they do somewhat leave like a trail of destruction in their path. And so as long as we're going into these relationships with our eyes open, that we understand what's going on, we don't sacrifice ourselves so that we can survive and have healthy boundaries and take care of ourselves, that's what's most important. And that's why I'm bringing this podcast to light today. So I hope you'll have some valuable takeaways. Please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. And I want to thank you so much for being here today. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast, a place to explore possibility through mindfulness, movement, and self-discovery. Our intention is to deliver insight and inspiration while fostering conversations that are genuine, unfiltered, and deeply human. We hope you will enjoy today's episode. Hi, Raven. Good morning. How are you today?
Hi, Nikki. I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. And thank you for joining me today on the Connected Community. I'm so happy to have you as my guest.
Thank you for having me.
So today I want to explore how to navigate life with a narcissist. And you have so much knowledge about this, and you've written books about it, and then you have a podcast about it, and this is your specialty is working with narcissists, and you've had narcissists in your life. So can we just start with like, what is a narcissist?
Ooh, great question. In a sense, it is a personality disorder that is developed. It is more of a nurture versus nature thing. So if anyone's asking, like, could I have it in my genes? I mean, it is something that you learn. As an example, if you have a narcissistic parent, then that child can pick up on those traits. And then if there's anything that starts to trauma or entitlement or, just not being taught to own your responsibilities, then that child grows up to be a narcissist. It is a personality disorder. There's a whole bunch of toxic people with lots of wounds and brokenness that are walking around in the world that are not narcissists, but a lot of us, because of the movement, we think that they are narcissists. But a true NPD has zero empathy, has zero remorse for what they're doing, how they're manipulating, how they're gaslighting you. And all they can think about is themselves. Like there is zero room for anyone else's needs in their brain, in their body.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the only time they're remorseful is if they feel like that human that they're directing towards starts pulling away, then there's this pulling back towards that person, right?
Oh, they know the game of empathy, but they don't have true empathy. They know how to act out empathy. But do they really truly have it? True NPD doesn't. They're just using it as a tactic to get you back in.
Yeah.
True people with true narcissistic personality disorder, they see everything as a transaction. They see you as a commodity, not as another human being having raw conversations, allowing you to have your freedoms and your boundaries. It's very much like, you are my toy, you are my trophy, and now you do all the things to get them, all the things you need to keep them. And then when they have you and you're comfortable, they place you on a shelf and dust collects and they neglect you. And then when you leave, they do all those tactics all over again. And then they bring in that hope within you and like, oh, it'll be just like when we first met. Like, this is why it takes multiple attempts to leave a narcissist, because they know the game. They know how to pull at your heartstrings and give you that hope all over again that they will fix it and it will, be great. They'll even go to lengths to go to therapy with you, but they will manipulate the situation and then everything will be blamed onto you in that therapy session.
Yeah. When I was in graduate school, we were talking about personality disorders and borderline personality and narcissistic. There's no way that you can read about it and understand it. And it happens to be like in the last 5 years, I've had 2 narcissists drop into my life and my reality. And they've presented really differently. One was a male and one was a female. And so it is interesting, like knowing those signs, but they're kind of sneaky. Especially the male, the narcissist that came into my life. He was a really good friend of myself and my husband. Like he became a really good friend. And I saw his narcissism was something dealing with women and relationships. And he had been married 4 times. And
red flag.
So we started seeing some patterns with him, but they were with women. And so I'm like, okay, we love this guy. We love him. So we're just going to separate him with women because he's horrible with women as the person. What happened was it started to filter into my life. I had a friend that was newly single, that had been hurt. And I had made the mistake of mentioning something like, let's pick her up. Let's go. We're going to all hang out, but she's really fragile. She's really emotional right now. Like, and so that was like almost like a cue for him to like latch on. Yeah. And then I set that boundary, like, you can go anywhere, but not in my neighborhood, not in my friendship community. He ended up, getting together with my friend. So some friendships ended there. He ended up in a relationship with her. But the part that's surprising to me was that he was in this relationship for a couple of years before he kind of blew everything up. And he always just kind of leaves a dust storm behind him. And then he never looks back. He doesn't
They're like tornadoes moving through life. Yeah.
Yeah. He's destroyed so many lives.
So
in his
he
path.
Convinced your friend to not be your friend and be with him. Is that what you said?
No, it's a little bit more complicated than that. I had seen him personally in so many different relationships. And then I had warned her and I said to her, like, I can't support this relationship. I've seen what he's done to all of these women, and I can't be like there for you and be there to support you when things fall apart. And I can't be happy about this relationship. And so I just need to kind of step back from that relationship. So I was the one that stepped away because I knew what was going to happen, and it did. And it happened. But he was in his disguise for like, I would say almost a year or even longer. And so how do we take care of ourselves so that we don't find ourselves in relationships with narcissists, because they can be sneaky?
We get so, I guess the word is arrogant that comes to mind. It's like, well, that will never happen to me. And especially when you're in that one-on-one with them, you think, well, he makes me feel so different and so special. So everyone else, all those other relationships that literally are evidence that there is a problem, and those are your red flags, then you ignore them because the psychological interaction between the two of you and that love bombing, and then there'll be trauma bonds and all these things will happen, and you think the whole time that you are different than everyone else, but you're just the same and his behavior is the same. And so if you can remove your own self from like being fully entrenched and believing that you are this super special, spectacular person they say you are, because you are, but not that way, right? Then you can view all of the other evidence, like their actions in their past, their actions in their other relationships are red flags. They are evidence, and they will convince you that everyone else was crazy. Like 4 other women were crazy. Like, how could that be possible? But they're so charming, and they dive deep quick. So they know what are your things that make you tick? What are the things that make you have that hope and have that open-heartedness? And then they play on those heartstrings. And so it is really a matter of approaching everything with a filter. And especially that's why they go for the fragile, because you aren't strong enough to have that filter. You aren't ready to be able to analyze anything. You're dealing in your own emotional trauma, your own emotional muck. And then they come in and they be your savior. That's what they thrive off of because they want to be the savior. And that is what hooks you in, is they have the solution for everything.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you start thinking of them as a savior, like what would they do? What would he say? Like, that's also a red flag because you need to be listening to you and your intuition, not what they would do. That's also a part where they've almost like wormholed their way into your brain and your heart. So that's another sign.
Yeah. All that happened with her. They ended up getting married, and she was the fifth, and the marriage lasted a very, very short time. And the thing that was the most shocking to me, and the reason I had to leave that friendship with him, was that he literally makes the decision, I'm done, walks away, always with another woman in his pocket. And he's mostly cheating during that, but then he's got another woman in his pocket, but he never looks back. There's no remorse. There's no self-reflection. There's no growth. There's no willingness to look at anything on his side. And it's really interesting.
It's like, like a spoiled brat kid is like, you give them a toy, they play for a second, and then they discard it and they throw it in the corner, and then they pick up another toy. And they discard it and they throw it and they pick up another toy. I always view narcissists with that emotional intelligence of a preschooler, like of a tiny child.
Yeah.
Because it seems to be the way that they move through life. Like that is their emotional intelligence. And it is so hurtful. It is so destructive and traumatizing for everyone in their wake.
Yeah, 100%. So you dropped two words that I don't think a lot of people are familiar with, is trauma bonding and love bombs.
Love bombing.
Yes. And so let's talk a little bit about those.
Love bombing, we all experience when we're first dating. There's this constant texting, constant communication. There's gifts, there's flowers, there's trips, there's all the things. And in a healthy relationship, love bombing is pretty moderate. It's not like boom, 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 you're getting all this stuff. Like if you have work, that particular partner will let you work and leave you alone. The narcissist will continue to text you and not care if you have work, or, they'll keep you up all late at night, even knowing that you do have to wake up early and work. Like there's all these things where they just kind of don't care about you as a person. And there's these tiny little signs. There's another sign. They're not respecting you as a person. They just want what they want. But when they're love bombing, you think, well, all this attention's so amazing. Like I want more. It's kind of like they're pouring in this drug, this dopamine hit in your brain. And it's amazing. Like have someone say that you're beautiful and you're so smart and all of the things that you've been wishing to hear from a partner, like all come on so fast. It feels like a Disney romance. And, that there's a whole problem with that setup of how quickly we're conditioned to think that these things happen quickly, but they don't. I mean, you can have a connection with someone quickly, but the relationship development needs time.
Yeah.
So that's the love bombing, is literally they are throwing like poofs of love bomb at you, like just a barrage.
Yeah.
Of all the attention.
It's like everything that you're longing for and wanting and wishing, they give you that in those moments.
Yeah, and if you are weak and vulnerable, which they do go for those, right? They go for the grieving, either widow or someone in your life has passed.
Yeah.
You're going for someone who is completely like me. I was completely naive and just unaware of any wares of the world. They go for someone who's just recently broken up or divorced. Usually there's some type of like wound that they will plaster over and fill for you. And then that's the trauma bond. That's the hook. It's like, okay, but they did all this for me. They really love me. Like they did all this back in September. I know it's in there. I know they can do it. But unfortunately, they just did it for the show. They didn't do it because they truly cared for you and respected you. They did it as a tactic. And that's the hard reality to accept.
So I still don't quite understand the trauma bonding piece of it.
So the trauma bond is, there's a little bit more to that. So they got you hooked in with the love bombing, and then some conflict will come up in the relationship, and they'll start to kind of talk down to you, or they'll discard you, and you're like, wait, what what's going on? I don't understand why, you're doing that. They'll like say something that you did. You did this, and this is, all your fault. And you're like, yeah, but you said that. Well, I guess gaslighting maybe may come in before trauma bonding.
Yeah.
So then they start to make you feel crazy. They deny everything they do. They'll rewrite history. And then you'll feel empty. You'll feel like they'll walk away, in this conflict. Maybe someone even moves out. Like, it depends on how intense this argument was. They walk away. And then you feel empty because they have given you so much dopamine that now that they're not with you, you feel empty. You feel kind of like you're coming down from a high of a drug. And so then this is why the no contact movement has been so huge, because then if you reach out and have contact, that's that bond. That's like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm missing a piece of my body without you. I need to resolve this conflict with you. And then you think they're a normal person. And so then you try and resolve the conflict. But that's that hook, that bond of like, well, you can't leave me, really. Because then they'll do their manipulation tactics. Like for mine, it was, if you just, put more makeup on, or if you just drank one more alcohol drink, then we'd be fine. Or if you just kind of were more open-minded, then our relationship will be fixed. And it's all fine. I forgive you. Come back. It's like no big deal. They're not taking any responsibility on their end. They're still just blaming you, but you have so much of this bond and this hook to them. Like, okay, well, yeah, I believe them. I believe that I can fix this. And so then you keep going back, and then you keep having conflict, and you keep hoping. And so it's like this bond. It's kind of like a drug addict. It's just bond through trauma. They'll use those conflicts to manipulate you, to make you think that you are the problem and you can fix it. And so therefore, you're just constantly bonded to them.
Yeah. There is this thing that they do with manipulation and turning things around and gaslighting so that you start questioning your own sanity. I know that happened to two of the women that were in the wake of that guy's path. Three, actually, three personally. And they start to question, like, if they're going nuts, or are they imagining things, and the blaming,
you go to
and
the
the
point
putting
so far that you're like, am I the narcissist? Because they turn everything onto you. They project everything off and onto you.
Yeah.
And you
then I
feel
think
like
it
you're
takes
taking crazy pills.
Yeah. And then after the relationship, you have to unravel a lot of stuff to make sense of it.
Yeah. I mean, 12 years passed, and I still feel like maybe I finally unraveled it. Like, do I have all the knots undone? Like, it's just so much. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was listening to one of your podcasts, and it was talking about the impact that narcissists have on our children. And I really think that that's so important. And so sometimes I think that when we're in a relationship with somebody else and then we have kids, some people just kind of stop feeling the value of themselves in that relationship. And we can always see kind of our kids and how things are impacting our kids. And so let's go there, because if we can't think of how they're impacting us, then let's think about how they're impacting our children, and what are they role modeling, and what are they teaching, and how are these kids going to come out of this and thrive as adults?
Yeah. I mean, that's like the blessing and the curse of having you being able to see the light. You didn't see it this whole time that they were doing it to you, but you see it, they're doing it to their children. And if they're doing it to you, they're absolutely going to do it to their children. It's not like only to me and then not to my kids. It's just depends on what age stage that they do it. And it's usually when that child starts to develop their own autonomy, their own identity, because everything's transactional, everything's ownership. So with a narcissist, their child is them. It's like a mini me. And that means they need to control them. They need to berate them or guilt them or do whatever they need to kind of get them to be just like them, and be really upset at them when they're not like them or when they don't think like them. And it's so hard to witness. So that's when you have to rise up and be like, okay, am I letting this happen or am I not? Am I standing up for my child, or am I just going to sit back and let it happen? And that's really that hero's journey for the mother. of realizing that, and having open conversations with our children is the way that you can explain that's not okay. I think that's a little bit when they're a little bit older. I would say like 8 and up is when you can start having those social conversations.
I mean, another narcissist that's in my life is a relative that I can't avoid. She's very narcissistic and self-serving, and everything's about her. And almost like when she doesn't get her way, she has tantrums and she gets angry. And so what's happening is everybody in the family is walking on eggshells around her, and nobody is willing to set boundaries, because the boundary setting is the most important thing to deal with the narcissist. But everyone is so terrified that she's going to blow up. She's literally like a ticking time bomb, that everyone is kind of tiptoeing around her. Nobody's setting boundaries. Everybody's saying, well, I'll just do it until I can't take it anymore. And then and all the people that are in this woman's life, like everyone is walking on eggshells, and yet outside of that circle of family, she's basically destroyed every single relationship, and everything needs to revolve around her. And when it doesn't, things explode. And so it's a very explosive family. And there are kids. There's these young kids in this. It's the mom. And for me, I just don't want to be around it. And so my husband and I have made a commitment that we just won't put ourselves in the same room as her, because we aren't willing to subject ourselves to that, and we won't be treated like that, and we don't want to see it. We don't want to like be around that energy. But for what about the people that feel like they can't draw that boundary, or they're so scared, or how do they deal with it? How do they take care of themselves?
You know, what's so interesting is that the narcissist loves to control people, and the way they know they're controlling you is through emotions. And like you said, she's like a ticking time bomb, and everyone feels really uncomfortable. It's just like a natural thing when someone's upset. And you have to not care. You have to not have any emotion. Like drawing a boundary, they're not doing it because they know that she's not going to like it, and then she's going to be upset, and then she's going to withdraw something that they're getting out of that relationship from her. Then she'll withdraw it. But if you don't care that you're not losing anything, right?
So what if she's withdrawing family? That's her thing. Is she's withdrawing herself from her family. That's how she manipulates her family. And the way she would manipulate the in-laws is withdrawing her children. So it's like you want a relationship with the rest of the family. So there's that tricky line.
Yeah. It is really hard and tumultuous, but when you draw a boundary, you can't not follow through. So it's really your choice. Are you going to put up with it and like keep appeasing her? Or are you going to draw a boundary and say, no more? And that's really up to each individual's choice. Like maybe for the grandparent, it's like worth it just to continue to have that relationship with the children. But it definitely causes a huge, wake and disturbance in the whole family dynamic, because now it's affecting you, and you're like, I'm not going to go there. Like, so now they're missing out on that relationship with you. Yeah. So there's these sacrifices. So for you, you're not willing to put up with it anymore. Yeah. So if someone still needs to interact with them, it's all about gray.
Why are boundaries so important here?
Boundaries are so important because right now she's ruling the show. And if there is no boundaries, then the whole family is toppled upside down. But drawing the boundary takes a lot of guts and courage. And then holding that boundary takes even more. And then whatever the consequence is to that boundary is what's going to really be the follow through. If that's going to create peace. That's going to create like a semblance of anchoring in the family. And if the grandparents aren't doing that, there's always going to be chaos. And she really does want to have that interaction and control of her family, because through her unhealthy coping skills of the narcissist, she's kept a bond with them versus everyone else she's not. So with them drawing boundaries, like whatever she's doing, this is not appropriate, this is affecting our whole family, then she does it, there's that consequence of like, well, then this is not happening here. Next time we can't all get together, we'll have to do individual, or I don't know what the example is.
I mean, the theme with both of the narcissists is, I think what and I don't know if this is for all narcissists, but they kind of pull whoever their target is. So say their partner, they kind of pull them into like a little bubble of their own. So they fill them up with like love and attention and affection and all the things that they, to kind of hook them in. And then they somehow have pulled their entire support system and extended network away from them. So they've made
from
their
that partner.
so they've
they
made
isolate
that partner's
them.
life like a little bit smaller, their support system, their friend system, their family system.
That is
as they've
a
tried
very
to
normal tactic.
It is a normal tactic. Yeah. Because I've seen it with both of them.
Because again, like if that partner is getting what the narcissists use as, we call it in this industry, supply, like love, attention, some type of support from someone else, since the narcissist is so insecure, they think, well, then they won't ever need me, or like they'll stop coming to me for that, or they'll just leave me one day and discard me because they don't need me for that. So that's their insecure attachment as a narcissist that isolates people that they want, so that they don't feel that pain of being left or discarded or feeling like they don't have any meaning or worth. They believe that, well, you're just going to leave me if you have support somewhere else. So they isolate you and they control you. And also, in my instance, all my friends would say, hey, he's not treating you right. Right. So therefore, when you gain support and advice outside of them, then they can't abuse you anymore. They can't do whatever they're doing at home because you are learning and seeing and gaining that support that that's wrong. So then they have to start owning up or changing, which they're never going to do. So, it's like a vicious cycle. So they try and keep you as isolated as possible so that they can still do whatever they want to do.
Well, I heard this in your podcast too. There's this excuse like, oh, they're in therapy. From my background in social work and understanding that these personality disorders develop, I'm not sure if there's enough self-awareness or insight available to a true narcissist for them to actually create meaningful change. And I hate to say that like people can't change, because I'd like to think that all people can change. Is there hope to make a relationship with a narcissist work?
That's a tough one. I'm going to say no 99.9% of the time. But so it's just a blanket no. And that's what they're hoping that you hope for. That's what's keeping you with them still, is you're hoping they will change. They will heal. They will heal that childhood wound that they have in some random vulnerable moment exposed to you. But then they hide it real quick again. So then you hold on to the hope even more. But they really don't. I mean, there's only been one, and I don't even know still, right? He was so convincing, so maybe he wasn't either. But he had a near-death experience, and he definitely claimed that he was narcissistic. And now he's this yogi, like he did an ayahuasca retreat after his near-death experience. And now he feels like he's a changed man. And in the conversation he was interviewed on my podcast. But I don't know in his psyche, I don't know in his brain, in his depth, if he really has changed or not. But you have to look at how their actions, right? What are their actions? And that's going to really be the litmus test of if they've changed.
Yeah.
But no, true NPD, it's like it's locked in at 18, and that's how they view the world, and that's what they think that they are entitled to, and good luck changing it. If you want to deal with it, then you just put up with it.
Yeah.
If you don't, then there's really no hope, and there's no need for you to continue to be abused and mistreated and essentially pushed down, right? You can't be yourself. You can't thrive when you're with someone who needs you to be pushed down so that they can feel like a person.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because these people are so different. I think that one is like a ticking time bomb that you're walking on eggshells and she's going to explode any minute. Once she gets close to people, it's pretty obvious pretty soon. Like there's no hiding it anymore. Like there's no honeymoon period with her anymore. Where my friend, it was so charming. Like he's just so charming and so kind and so present and so emotionally available going into those relationships, and then able to like hide it for quite a long time. So they present so differently.
It's almost like, I there should be some type of like study on this, but that they do whatever they need to do to get their needs met. So this particular, the woman, whatever's worked for her is what she continues to do, which probably started in childhood. Is
stomping her
temper
feet and having
tantrums.
tantrums. Yes, totally.
Yes.
She's like an adult having temper tantrums every
Yes.
day. Yes.
And it's worked. So why stop? Like, I'm just going to continue to do it the rest of my life because it works and it's working. Whereas
Yeah.
for him, it's more about the chase because he discards. Like, he chases, he conquers, and then he discards.
Yeah.
Like,
I actually think it's almost like, I think it is like that. Like, I'm gonna find this woman, and then she's gonna resist me because she had a little resistance, and then I'm going to make her fall in love with me to where she marries me, and then right after she marries me, I'm gonna leave. Like, there's this, and he would also morph for every relationship. So if one person was into like concerts and going out to eat, then he would be to that. If the next person was vegan, he'd probably become vegan. Like, he would just morph and become whatever partner he was supposed to be.
And that conquering is what was meeting his emotional needs from something way back in childhood. And then once he got it, like the toy, then he's like, oh, I don't actually really need real commitment. So he's just going to leave and find someone else. And it's like the pattern repeats because they're so unself-aware.
Let's talk about gaslighting, because I've always heard of the word gaslighting. And then I just realized that there was something going on in my life that I had to deal with gaslighting. And it's so subtle. And I feel like it's those moments that make us question our own sanity sometimes. Like, am I going crazy? Did I say that? Like, is that true? And, or in a relationship, like shutting down and not sharing because, you're worried how that person's going to respond and react. So can you talk about what that is, like gaslighting, for people that aren't really familiar, what it's like to be the recipient of that?
Yeah. I mean, when you express your true feelings and then there's negative reactions to that, right? You're either guilted, you're shamed, something is removed from you, like children, or mine was like vacations or gifts, like things are then revoked. So then you're not going to say what you want to say because that's been a track record. And this is probably what's happening with a female in your family. Bad things happen when you speak the truth. Gaslighting is narcissists won't take responsibility. So it is essentially their tactic to get away with everything and not take responsibility, not change, and convince you to stay. So they have to gaslight you because they have to rewrite history. Like, you observed this happened. He actually did this right in front of your face. And then you will bring it up. Like, well, maybe you won't bring it up that day, right? Because you've had this negative responses. You're afraid to say it. But then it's like conscious keep pushing on you. It's like, just bring it up. Just say it. That was so wrong. So then maybe a day or two later you do. And they're like, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
No, you got it wrong. And like, they literally will.
Or you're overreacting, or.
They will.
Yeah.
It's crazy. They will literally rewrite history. And you're like, I should have had that recorded. I should have gotten on videotape because now I'm wondering, did it really happen? Because they are so adamant.
Yeah.
And they just blatantly lie to you about things. And then you're like, I don't know what's true anymore because they're so convincing. They're so adamant. So, I mean, that's gaslighting for you.
Or you're making that up. You're overreacting. You're making a big thing out of nothing. That's not really a thing. Like, my friend was questioning if this guy was cheating on her. You know, women, we have this intuition, and you really have this strong intuition, and you really feel like something's going on. And we're always taught like that's a really important thing to trust. And then you would bring it up, and then the response would be, oh, you're overreacting. You make a big deal out of everything. You're blowing this up. It wasn't a big deal. It was just a friendly whatever. You're jealous. And then they start questioning their own, not only their own like truth, but then their own integrity of all these different ideas. They start questioning everything.
You put the nail on the head. It is, what they do is not just deny the action. They will then character shame you and whoever's involved. That's what would happen with my friends would tell me like, he shouldn't treat you like that. And then I would go home and say, you shouldn't treat me like this. And then he would character bash, throw them all under the bus, convince me why. Like, he would like provide credible evidence, which it wasn't really real evidence. It was just speculation about why I shouldn't listen to those people. So it's always character bashing to you or to someone else. for you to doubt yourself and for you to not believe what you just 5 seconds ago believed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to see people in these relationships. It's hard to see people like not stuck in the relationship with a narcissist. And it just feels like when I think of my friends and family, it just feels like a very like trapped, suffocated feeling. And almost like a little bit of a helplessness on top of that.
Yeah. And I would say if there's any way to find compassion for your friend that you had to separate from, like, I lost so many friends, so many. They tried to help, and then I would turn against them because he would convince me that they were a bad person and they shouldn't get involved, and they just were so hurt by it. And it was suffocating for them to see, because then I would go after their character. But it's not like narcissists trap the smartest of people. I just interviewed an attorney, and her episode is out today on the podcast. Like, she was in the background of domestic violence, but she still fell for 2 narcissists. Like, they are so cunning.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. So the weakest, the smartest, the strongest, it doesn't matter. If there's one little hole in that armor, they will find it. So I have great compassion for those who have, I guess because myself, have been abused, because it's not something you really asked for. You just had such a big heart, and you had so much hope in what that person was selling you, that it's really hard. It feels almost like another betrayal of once you've left that relationship, that everyone around you like also left you and ditched you. And I get it. I get why, but it feels like, why couldn't they have just been there for me? But you're right. It's because it's painful to watch, and it's suffocating, and it's so hard.
I did mend things with that friend after they broke up. It's not ever going to be the same, but we mended things, and she, same like what you said, she thought he had changed, that it was different with her. And he hid it for a lot longer than the other women. But he did. He's so charming. He's like one of the coolest guys. If he didn't have this character trait, I mean, he's one of the greatest guys ever. He has so much to offer. And I'm like, I know, like, he's super charming, and when he's on, he's giving you all that attention, and he was emotionally vulnerable. So he could go there. He just couldn't take ownership. So like with all the other women, they were crazy. And, all 5 wives that he's had now, it was always them. And, and he's got children, and he's role modeling this as a dad, just jumping from relationship to relationship and getting married, and like throwing these women out and not looking back and leaving a path of destruction. And his children are being role modeled that this is what relationships look like, and that there's no value in the marriage.
I know, it's so sad. And for that, the only thing we can do is, as the mother who stayed back in the wake of everything, is just be that solid anchor of emotional intelligence. Work on yourself for yourself, but also to really be that guide for your children, and say, you know what? Because one day when they get older, especially in teenage years, the narcissist will do something, and the child's, I don't know, sparkly glasses will drop and be like, I can't believe he did that, right? And then that's that moment where that child will start to gain clarity on what is healthy, what is not. But it really takes the other partner to continually talk about, healthy behaviors, emotional intelligence, making sure that those children take responsibility in your home, may not happen in the other home. And then they'll see one day, like, wow, like, dad's really messed up. Like, I don't want anything to do with him anymore, or I'm not going to be like that, or whatever it is. But I feel like there's always hope, at least if there's one strong emotional anchored parent.
I feel like this whole like narcissistic personality disorder is just getting tossed around a lot lately, but then there's like the people that have this true disorder that's really destructive. How do you distinguish when somebody's really in a dysfunction, and that dysfunction can't necessarily be helped with meds and therapy?
I think that's a really, really good question, because it is tossed around so much, and I'm guilty of it myself the last couple of years. if the other person is willing to have difficult conversations and take ownership of their part, then
Ownership.
that's an extremely broken person that maybe you haven't talked to for a while, but you were able to work through it because you took your ownership of side, they took theirs. If they're continually not taking ownership and pushing it off on excuses or blaming you or whatever, then that definitely is someone that potentially would be diagnosed as NPD. Like, I think that's the biggest thing.
The ownership.
NPD,
Or you said, I
they
think
don't take
before
ownership.
too, they could take ownership and say they're going to go to counseling, but then look at their behavior. So
Yeah,
just
it's
because
in
they
the
said
actions.
it, will their behavior change? Will their actions change? I think ownership is
Yeah.
the thing, because narcissists can't take ownership. So if they do take ownership, is it true ownership? Like, yes, are you willing to look at this? Are you willing to go to therapy? Are you willing to go to couples counseling? Are you truly willing to like dive in and go into that space? Or are you just saying that and nothing's going to change and we're just going to go back the way we were before?
Exactly. Because it'll always be like another excuse, or to be like, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't,
Yeah.
I'm sorry I did this. There was no
Yeah.
action taking responsibility. That was just that was a fake I'm sorry. That was a fake apology.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's looking at that ownership and seeing if change happens over time.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, you're not going to change somebody else.
Yeah.
They have to
Exactly.
change themselves. If it can't happen, then you're looking at self-preservation.
Exactly. You're looking at gray rock, boundaries, limited time, putting them outside your circle, not sharing with them personal information that they will use against you later. Those are all things that will help you survive with a narcissist. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've written 2 books about narcissism. Do you want to share your books and what they're about?
Absolutely. The first one is called Empath and the Narcissist. It's backwards, sorry. But this is How to Overcome Narcissistic Abuse. It's a memoir. It has the definitions of all the different types of narcissism, different abuse. And I do at the end of each chapter have an exercise that helped me heal spiritually. This is a spiritual book. This isn't like a psych book. It definitely has definitions, but it's a very spiritual bend. And the very last chapter I discovered human design, and it really helped me kind of go, oh, that's who I am. That's like where I'm vulnerable. And so I have the last chapter is just like a brief, like what human design is and a little bit of summary of everything. And then the follow-up book is because everyone kept asking me, like, how do I learn more about human design? And it's a follow-up, a guidebook, Empath's Guide to Rising Strong. And it has 4 sections. It's got shadow work with the story of goddess Inanna. Again, this is a very spiritual book. It's like a journal. It's a guidebook. It helps you through the healing process. It has powerful meditations in here. And then the last part has moonology, like how to harness the moon to help you heal. And then the last part is all about human design. Like I go through all the gates and all the different parts. So you can go through your chart and the book. You can color in it, write in it, take notes, and learn about it. So
Yeah, very cool. How do people contact you and find you if they wish to connect?
the best way is my website, ravenscott.show, because I'll have all my links to all my socials there. You can grab your free chart. I have the free book offer as well, the Empath's Guide to Rising Strong, a free ebook, and then I'll also create a little mini personalized human design chart.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then, yeah.
Perfect.
Find me all of my socials.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the Connected Community Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I can be found at www.nikkiyoga.com, NICKYYYOGA.com. Until I see you again next week, I hope you have a beautiful day.